Hi, everyone, and welcome to Astrology and Coffee. I am Megan with the Academy of Logic and Light, and we've got Julie and Elle here as our teachers. Anyway, welcome. Today we are talking about your birth chart, and we're going to walk you through all of the different aspects on it and help you just kind of learn what each of them mean. And so when someone asks what your sun sign is, you can know where to find it on that crazy confusing pie. so so if you want to go to astro.com and pull up your birth chart there, we'll kind of show you how to do that if you don't know. And you just need your birthday, time, and where you're at. So you can go ahead and start pulling that up. And while you're doing that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Academy of Logic and Light. So we are a peer-to-peer teaching structure that we are just trying to help get teachers and students all in the same community and kind of lifelong learning and helping each other really master the different like magical practices and fun esoteric things. So that's what we're hoping to help everyone with, as well as getting coaches, teachers, everybody together and really uplifting the community. So we do monthly meetups, and we are the Academy of Logic and Light on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We have a Facebook group that you can participate in to help out with planning some of our events and even influencing some of the upcoming classes. We also have on a website at academyoflogicandlight.org. And we also are on Patreon. So if you really like what we're doing and you're interested in supporting us, you can get even more magical content by donating over there. We have tiers that you get tarot readings, astrology readings, and even like energetic light work. So light work, energetic work. Anyway, so we have lots of cool perks over there if you're interested to check it out. And also if you're interested in teaching or leading an event or doing live streams, if you're not local here in Utah, you can reach out to us and we would love to have you get involved with the Academy. You can reach us anywhere on social media, or you can reach out on to our email at academyoflogicandlight@gmail.com. So that's us. That's the Academy. That's what we're working on and doing. And so I'm going to roll an intro, and then I'm going to leave it up to our wonderful teachers here to get you started. Thanks.
Thank you, Maggie. Hello.
Good morning.
It's like such a Tuesday morning.
It is. We were just talking how tired we are, but we had good sleep.
I know. I should be more energetic and wound up. But like I said, I think I maybe got too much sleep. So
that's what coffee's for.
Yes. Well, I'm Elle. If you've been watching, you know. And we have Julie. And we just like to have these fun conversations on astrology. And the last few episodes with the elements have been pretty, I would say simple. We could just go through it. We're chit-chatting. We're going through all the things. This one is a little more technical. So if I'm going too fast, or if you're taking notes throughout this, just shoot us a chat if I'm going too fast. Or if you need me to go back to something, I'm completely fine with that. But it is a lot of information, and it's a lot of information that's, all at once too. So just let us know if we need to slow down or if we need to go back on something. We don't mind that at all. That's what we're here for. Julie, do you have anything you want to add before we get started?
Just don't forget to bring your birth charts from astro.com. It just needs your information, and then you can ask all the questions that you want. And the more questions that you ask, the more we can help and streamline this for the future stuff. And I think what's after this session, this one's a very vital one until we move into the next phase where we're going to be going in detail for each zodiac and the placements and the houses and all of that. So this is really a vital one, a technical but vital.
Very much so. All right. So let's go into what is a birth chart. A lot of you have seen the circle with all the lines, and then there's just a bunch of, it looks like a chaotic mess, and it's hard to just even like know where to start. Like I remember when I was learning astrology, I'm like, and I'm like I told you before, I'm old school. Like I've had to draw the lines and figure out the times and do this whole different thing that you now can go on the internet and just pull up your birth chart. And that's incredible because it took a long time to do a birth chart. So you get this circle, and I like to refer to it as a piece of, or as a pie. So when I'm referring to things, I'm going to use the technical term, but I'm also going to use the pieces of the pie because I feel like it's easier when I'm explaining something. If I were to say, oh, go to your second house ruler, you're going to be like, wait, what was that? So if I say, hey, second house ruler, AKA pie of the crust or the crust of the pie, then you know kind of where to go to, or piece pie number 2. It's just kind of easier. It's kind of fun, makes it a little less mathematical and just the technical side of it. I don't know. To me, it's more fun. And I love pie. So I'm from the South. We like pie.
Who doesn't love pie?
Bitches love pie in the South. So that's how I'm going to refer to this. So if you guys have your birth chart pulled up, so you have this circle, and I just want to explain that what this is a screenshot of the sky when you were born. So when you look at this, you're like, okay, what does that mean? Like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But if you look at the line that goes all the way through the circle in the middle, the horizontal circle or horizontal line, that is the horizon. So that is, and so if you're looking at this, to the left is considered the east, and all the way on the other side is considered the west. So depending on when you were born, that's where your sun will be placed according to this circle. So the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. So if you were born, say 12 noon, your sun is going to be at the top of this circle, somewhere where those planets are. So just to kind of, you know, the Earth is on an axis, so it does tilt. So keep that in mind. It's not going to be straight up at 12 o'clock, but it is going to be somewhere in that vicinity. Another thing to think about is depending on where you were born, if it's in the winter and you're born at 5:30, you're most likely going to be below the sunset because the sun has set. Now, if you were born that same time in the summer, depending on where you live, it will be above that. So that's just kind of a generalization of like how you're like, oh, I was born at 3 a.m. I'm going to be below the horizon. My sun's going to be somewhere down here in this area, or, 12 noon up top. So that's kind of a way to look at where your sun might be placed just off the top of your head. Like if you meet someone and they're like, oh, I'm at noon, you're like, oh, your sun's probably in the 10th house, possibly the 9th, maybe even the 11th, but somewhere in that vicinity. So it just kind of gives you this advantage that a lot of people don't have. So, and I did make notes for this. I'm going to refer to my notes often to make sure I don't miss anything. So another thing is everyone knows that a circle is 365 degrees. Every single degree in the circle means something. It's very, very important that you know. So that you know that the degrees, depending on what the degree is at, it signifies something. So, and we're not going to go into that today, but just know that the degrees are important. And for each sign, there's 30 degrees in each sign equaling 360. So the house of Aries, there's 30 degrees in that. The house of Taurus, 30 degrees in that, and it goes all the way around. So each sign gets 30 degrees and signifies something with each degree. So, I know that was a lot of math. I just mathed a lot. I'm sorry.
That was my main thing when starting astrology. I was like, oh no, I didn't realize there was going to be so much math. I'm going to be so embarrassed.
Yeah, no. You're good. It's very, like, when you really look at it, you're like, wow, that it's not as hard trying to figure all this out as you think. I just think that it's so overwhelming because nobody gives anyone. I never had direction on where to start. It's like even when you take classes, they just kind of like, there's no starting point. So that's where we're trying to give you real good advice on like what the facts behind it, the math behind it, so you understand like, oh, okay, you're never going to see 31 degrees in a planet. So, and we'll break that down a little bit more for you as well. So the next piece of this pie is going to be the pie slices. So each slice represents a house, the entire thing. So if you look in the middle by the circle, there's going to be numbers all the way around it, and it goes counterclockwise. It's going to be 1, 2, 3 in that order, and it goes all the way to 12 for the 12 signs, because each house represents a sign. First house is always Aries. Aries is number 1. It's cardinal, starts off the season, always going to be Aries. And then you have the Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, etc. So it kind of goes all the way around. Now, on this outer circle, it's going to be the house ruler. And this is always going to change depending on what your rising is. So if you have a rising in Aries, every single house, first house, second house, third house, tentatively, because I'll explain why it's not exact, will most likely be in the same sign of that house. So the first house is Aries, ruled by Aries. If your ascendant is Aries, that first house chart ruler is Aries. Second house will most likely be Taurus. Third house will be Gemini. So that's kind of like the flow of things. Now, because Earth is tilted and nothing is perfect. It doesn't fall exactly on the houses. Like if you look at this chart, you can see that the second house, so the second piece of pie, starts in Cancer, but ends in Leo. So that just kind of shows the imperfections of these are not exact because of how everything aligns. You're not going to have I study Placidus. That's the chart that I study. So I want you to keep that in mind. And I'm going to go into the different types of charts. If you do whole chart, if you study whole charts, it will be each time in the houses. I know that's even more confusing. It probably just confused the heck a lot of people. But depending on what you study, I like Placidus because it is very to me it's very accurate because it doesn't line up and nothing really ever lines up unless you're perfect, which maybe you are. Maybe you're a Virgo. I don't know. But typically it just doesn't flow that way, and I find it to be more accurate. But that doesn't mean that a lot of people don't study the whole signs and that doesn't work for them. So if you do see some that are aligning perfectly and you're like, oh, that L girl, she doesn't know what she's talking about, you're probably looking at whole signs and not Placidus, just so you know. So that's the piece of the pie, the house. The crust is the ruler. So that is going to be a Cancer ascendant, Leo second house ruler, Virgo third house ruler, and etc. So it kind of goes with the same theme, the same order of the zodiac. It's exactly the same order around as the house ruler. So you see you've got some houses that are empty that have no planets in them. And then you look up top and you're like, man, there's a lot of houses in that one. I'm trying to see what my eyesight, guys, sorry. So that's the 11th house. You have a ton of planets in the 11th house. And that means something. That's a big deal. So that's kind of how you can see like, oh, all these planets are in the 11th house. And you could also look at what I was explaining earlier. Oh, they must have been born maybe 10 a.m., 11 a.m. You can see that sun is kind of not quite up higher in the very point of the chart, but it's up there. So you can guess if they were born. They were born during the day. So just cool. Fun fact, fun learning little fact there. So let me just go to my notes here, make sure I didn't miss anything. Does anyone have any questions so far on the pie? The pieces,
I have a quick question.
Crust. Yeah.
So somebody told me, I don't know who, but you feel free to tell me if this is wrong. Someone said if all of your stuff is on the left-hand side, it's how you affect the world, and it's like the active part. And if everything's on the right-hand side, it's how the world affects you, and it's the responsive type. And the same with
Yes.
the upper energy is like the external ish, like battle, and then the lower part would be like the internal battle. Is that right?
Yes, so that's very true. I've always heard active and passive, but
Passive. That's good.
yeah, I'm like but yes, so depending on where a lot of your stuff is, it does tell you how you process things, how things come to you. And a lot of times, and this isn't always because I have found to not be accurate, but if a person has a lot of their signs above, I find them to be more extroverted versus then a lot of planets below, they're more introverted.
That tracks.
Most of the time. There are aspects that change that. There are things that, if they have a trine in their Mercury and their Mars that causes that everything's lower, but that is higher, it can cause the person to become more outgoing. And I know that was probably very Spanish for a lot of you, but there are just different aspects that can change that. But typically what I find is introverted, extroverted, above the line, below the line, because you're born at night. And I think that that's kind of an interesting whole nother thing. I don't even know that would be considered even astrology based, but being born during the day, being born during the night, day people versus night people. I don't know. It's a very interesting little
I want to study
thing that I kind of watch. Yeah. So it's fun. And then I did want to give you guys just a little bit of history on astrology, not to go into it. I mean, no one wants a history lesson, but for a lot of people that don't know, astrology was originated in Mesopotamia and it spread to India. And this was in like 3rd millennium BCE. So this was like forever ago. And it was kind of tweaked by the Greek civilization. So they kind of made their own tweak on it, did a little different study. And one of the things that I want to say for people who are very private, who may not understand, like you may not understand that the person who has your birth time, location, and all of that, how deep they can dig and know about you. So if you're a very private person, it's something to keep in mind that if you don't want someone to have all this knowledge at their fingertips of you, I wouldn't be so freely to just hand out your information. Because I do have a lot of people that are like, oh, here. And then they're like, I didn't know that you would be able to tell all that. And I'm really uncomfortable now, Julie's
like when you start dating someone, you're like, what's your birth time?
No, you can tell them no. And you should if you don't want. I mean, did you know in a lot of cultures, they do not give out that information because they feel like
that's like a social security number.
Yeah, you're vulnerable. And they can, if, a potential enemy could have this knowledge of when you're going to be the strongest, when you're going to be the weakest. I mean, they may peg your, Saturn return for like some real heavy shit at that time. And like they have that advantage. And, it's just, I think it's Chinese. I think it's the Chinese culture. They're like, no, you cannot have our birth time. Like they're very superstitious about it.
I understand.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%. But, and then other cultures, they aren't allowed to marry without a comparison chart. They're not allowed to, they want to make sure that they're compatible and that things are going to work. I don't know if it's like India or it's somewhere over there, but they require a birth chart. So just some fun, interesting facts about astrology. There are different types. So there's different systems for each one. So there's 3 main types. There's Vedic, Western, which is what I study and what we teach here is Western. And then there's Chinese astrology. So those are the 3 big ones. Vedic, I'm not going to go into that one too much. It's more, I think it derives from India. And it's also, they're very good with making predictions. I personally don't like the birth charts of them. It shifts everything. So I think there's some advantages of it, but it's not for me. It's not when I do any chart reading. I've played with it a little bit. I've gone to classes. I've studied it a little bit. I just personally don't find it as beneficial as Western. So those are the 3 main types. And there are different, like I said, house systems. I do Placidus. So if you're ever like doing your birth chart and it's like whole sign, Placidus, Coke, you're just like all these different ways that it determines, because there's different studies. So you can just find what works best for you. I just personally prefer Placidus. But just being aware of like what each of those mean. And because it's so easy to just click on the wrong thing and your whole chart is completely different. And you're like, wait, this chart said this. You probably clicked on something wrong or different than you did the first time. So just be careful and watch which methods you're clicking on and which chart you're actually reading, because there's 100 different charts. So I don't know if we're going to be able to pull up what the chart you can see at the top. It will tell you Placidus, and you can kind of see, it'll tell you your location. It will tell you everything. You can kind of double check yourself to make sure that you entered all your information correct. So that's very helpful. So next, if anyone doesn't have any questions, I'm going to kind of go into the keys on the side so that we can kind of check both of them. So realistically, this key on the side is the exact same thing as the circle. The circle is just more intimidating because you have all these lines through it. It's confusing. But this
math.
Yeah, math. It's a lot of math. It's very, very intimidating. So when you have a key, you're like, okay, my sun is in Taurus. And I have to make this bigger, sorry. My sun is in Taurus and it's 18 degrees. And I don't know what that means, but I know that my sun is in Taurus. Doesn't tell you the house, doesn't tell you anything other than your sun is in Taurus. So if you look at your chart, you see the crust of the pie. See that at the top there, that's the house ruler. So the sun is in Taurus in the 11th house. And you look down at your little pie tip and it has the 11 down there. So when you look at this chart and you see the glyph, the circle with the dot in the middle, which implies that that's your sun, you go and you say, okay, so my sun is in Taurus in the 11th house. Bam, you just read your first little chart glyph. And
Now
that's
you sound like
exciting.
a professional.
Yes. So it's like, okay. So then you go look for your moon glyph. And you're like, okay, there's the moon. It says Capricorn 9 degrees. So then you go onto the circle and you find your moon. And you're like, okay, there it is right there. The crust is Capricorn. It's in the 7th house. So when you have that 7th house, obviously represents relationships. And we'll go into all of that. But you can kind of see my moon, 7th house relationships, Capricorn, very organized, very structured, likes to have a plan. So it's just kind of like you can take the information that you have about the 7th house, about the sign Capricorn, and what the moon signifies, which is emotions and how you internalize things. And you can kind of put those together. And that's how you start learning how to read charts. Like that's how you like put it into perspective of like, okay, like if this were a moon just down a little bit in Sagittarius in the 6th house, it would be something completely different, different. So knowing and understanding how to look for your glyphs in the houses that they're in, and knowing the chart ruler, which is ultimately what the sign is going to be in, it's huge on how you read charts. And it's the start, and that's where you start, and playing around with it. And just writing down, for me, I would go and be like, okay, moon in this house. This is, the chart ruler. I would write down all of the things as far as qualities of the sign, qualities of the house, what all the moon interprets. And then I put it, all down. And then I go researching everything and I make sure that it aligns. And it gives you just a very broad understanding of how to interpret the houses with the sign. And then the degrees is a whole nother thing. So I'm just going to give you like a broad generalization of this. Anything that starts at 0 is new. It is brand new. You are a baby. If this were a 0 degree, I would say your moon and emotions are very you've got a lot of evolving to do. It's very, very green. You're new to this. If you were at 29 degrees, you would be like, you just meet those people with like old souls. You can just tell they've been around for a while. Those are the ones that are in 29 degrees, most likely in their moon sector, maybe their sun. It kind of depends, different aspects and things. But once you learn the degrees and the important ones and where they're at on their chart, you can add that to your reading. The moon in the 7th house in Capricorn at this degree, break it all down, writing it out or typing it out, whatever works best for you. Is, for me personally, it was a very good way for me to learn and really understand and give myself space to make mistakes, because it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to learn. So
We have a
Julia,
question.
I was like, oh, my thing doesn't pop up that I have a comment or anything.
I got you.
Appreciate you. I'll let you do the questions.
How do you find your ascendant?
So your ascendant is always going to be, so you have the line that separates it in the middle, the horizon, I like to call it. It's going to be right there at the 1st house. So your ascendant is in Cancer, because that line is right there in Cancer. The crust, that 69 represents Cancer, and that's your ascendant. And so each pie crust will go through all the signs, again, counterclockwise. And then the planets rotate clockwise. So as the hours go on, your planets will move according to those hours. The moon changes every 2 hours. No, 2 days. So the moon changes every 2 days. The ascendant changes on the hour. There are a lot of planets that stay for days. I mean, there are planets that stay for years. Your Pluto. So Pluto is like a 10 to 12 years. So if you were born in 83 to 95, your Pluto's in Scorpio. So that's just kind of like how long Pluto, I mean, Pluto is so far from the sun, it doesn't revolve around. It's very slow moving planet. So it also depends on how fast the planets move. Mm-hmm. So that's how you would read a little piece of your pie and just some background of the planets and how long they stay. I didn't write down exactly.
I have them.
When you have them. Let's let Julie take that one away then.
I was like, I have this one. I know something.
You got this.
I have the sun rotates every 30 days. The moon's 2.5 days. Mercury's at 30 days. Venus is 2 months. Mars is 1.5 months. Jupiter 1 year. Saturn 2.5 years. Uranus 7 years. Neptune 14 and Pluto 30. I'll write it in the comments too.
30?
30.
Dang, yeah. It's there for a minute.
Yeah, I think I might be one of the only ones in my group that has Pluto where it's at.
Yeah. Well, and my husband and I are 10 years difference, and I'm like, surely our Plutos are different. And that's kind of how I learned that. I was like, oh, we're in the same, but you think about it, like Pluto kind of represents, it's a vast group of people experiencing things. Like we went through COVID together. We went through 9/11 together, where people in other generations go through Pearl Harbor or, Nam days, like different things. So it's like what your generation goes through is kind of a, significance of where your Pluto is. So, and then let me get down here. We can go. So the keys, back on the keys. Sorry, Megan, we're like back and forth. This one is a very different coffee and astrology morning, so we're still working on getting this organized. So bear with us.
It's a technical one for really early in the morning.
Yes, I hope you guys had a lot of coffee. So, I did go do the sun and the moon, but just so you know, you can go down that whole list. It gives you all your planets. It also adds your true node, which I always say north node. It's the same thing. And then your Chiron, which is in there too. So you can always see where those are placed, what house they're in. And it just gives you kind of the breakdown of all that. Like I said, it's the same exact thing. It's just for reading purposes for different people. It's it just breaks it down differently. So it's kind of nice. I learned off the key and I would compare it to the chart, and that's how I learned. So it was a good tool for me. And then you have the little box below, which has your ascendant, and your MC. Your MC is the highest point of the chart, of your chart. And so I know it doesn't look like the highest point, but you'll have to remember that the Earth is on its axis. And so when this person was born, that's kind of how the Earth was tilting. If you look at my birth chart, it almost looks like the 10th house should be the 11th house. Like on my chart, it would be kind of tilted a little bit because of the time I was born in the fall. So it makes sense, right? So it just kind of shifts a little bit. That's kind of the beauty of the charts, is they aren't the same. You're never going to see the 10th house for every birthday to be the same place. It's going to be close, but it does shift and change a little bit.
Is
So
the MC also known as something else?
I mean, there's a whole breakdown of the MC, which we could go into.
Does it have another name?
Yeah, that's the acronym for it.
Okay.
It's something coil.
Oh, no worries.
I'm like, I can look this up really fast. But yes, it does. It has like a lot. That's the acronym for it. But it's let's see. I will tell you. Oh, my thing just broke. So,
oh no.
The medium coil, holy. So it is the very top of your chart, or at the 12 o'clock mark. It represents the highest point on the horizon that any planet can reach. So that's kind of the definition of it. Highest point, hello, of your chart.
Midheaven, is that also something that could be called?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Sorry. It's also your midheaven. And that's what it honestly says a lot, is midheaven. It'll have on your chart. I didn't put those two together. Hey. But yes, it is the midheaven. And it's the highest point of your chart. A lot of times it's in your 10th house. I've seen it shift a little bit, but it normally is very odd if it's not in your 10th house. It's of your career and public roles. Just to give you a little definition. Oh, no. Sweetheart. Sorry. So, all right. Sorry. Going down the list, though, after that key, we're going to go to the next one. It tells you your fixed, cardinal, mutable at the top there. And then it's going to tell you the elements: fire, air, earth, and water. And if you ever only have this, hold on 1 second. This key, you could tell a lot. You could tell a lot by knowing, which we've already gone through these the last, few lives that we've had. So if you look at that and you're like, okay, Jupiter is fire and cardinal. So you're going to say, okay, I don't have the chart, or I may not have the key above, but what is the fire sign that's cardinal? And you're going to say Aries. Okay, so they're Jupiter's in Aries. That's a way that you can kind of read that and signify, okay, that means that they're, you don't see the house, but you could look at that key right there and at least be able to tell what their signs are in. And then, like, for example, the moon, it's an earth sign, also cardinal. So you're going to say, okay, that's Capricorn. So it's just a way to read the keys if you just had that key. It just kind of gives you some information on it. And then I'll let her go through that just so you guys can see, get a little visual. You're doing amazing, Megan. I'm so grateful for you.
Freehanding this.
Yeah. She's like, oh God, where are they going to go next? Sorry. And then below.
That's my favorite part.
Yes, this one is a lot of fun. This one we will go into heavily one day for teaching, but I'm just going to give you that this is the aspects of the chart. So all those little lines you see going crazy are aspects, which means how the planets coincide with one another or don't. So sometimes you have planets that work really well together, and those planets trine. They make a triangle. So anytime you see a triangle, I believe, down here on this little key, the sun at the top, and if you bring it down to where it's associated with the moon, it has a triangle. That means that they trine, they get along, they're harmonious, they flow really well together. So the sun in, so look at this chart again. The sun in Taurus with the moon in Capricorn. Those are two earth signs. They go hand in hand. They're both practical. A Taurus moon sun with a Capricorn moon has a true understanding of self. It makes a triangle because it's positive. If you were to have a square, which would be like a Taurus and a Gemini, those two have to learn how to work through. They would be considered a square, and it's
Like a
not really. I just kind of spit it out there. I don't know that that's the case. Sorry, but yeah, the squares on the key there indicate that those are areas of your personality that you have to learn how to work with each other. Like you may have a lot big feelings, but also not want to feel, and you have to find a happy medium.
Yeah.
So do you have anything you want to add on
I
that?
think the blue is how I learned is that's the harmonious kind of things that work together in your chart. And the red is things that you have to learn in this life. So not necessarily like bad things, just like lessons.
Yes. I always try to steer away from like negative things.
Yeah.
I mean, even obstacles that we have in life are so important.
They're important.
So it's not necessarily bad. It's just room for open-mindedness, learning, or you can fight it your whole life and be bitter. I truly believe that's where bitterness comes from. Unevolving equals bitterness. So make sure we're evolving and learning.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so then you've got your triangles, it's conjunctions and trines. Those are the harmonious like things that we've learned and that they're working together with. And then your oppositions, your squares in oppositions and squares, right? Those are the life lessons.
Those are the ones that are a little more challenging.
So especially like people who are like just like, oh my gosh, well, especially people who are like playing like victim role of life's happening at me. Having a look at your birth chart without judgment is a really helpful way to be like, oh, okay, this is actually something I have to do in this life, and I actually have to like work through it. And it makes Mercury retrograde a little easier too, I think.
Absolutely. I don't even fret Mercury retrograde anymore. Like I might say something really stupid or my computer might crash, but I'm like, you know what? It's fine. I've learned to accept it. It is what it is.
It brings up the things you're supposed to work through. So it's kind of important.
Yeah. So, and even things like, and this is getting a little off topic, but just to throw out there, we just had a full moon in Scorpio, and I'd like to know how many people's secrets surfaced. How many people found out things or had conversations with people that they didn't know, like something about that person. Like it was a heavy one. I feel like there were so many people texting me like, oh my gosh, I just found this out. What do I do? I found out things that I was like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know this about this person. And so I don't know. I just think that when you really get in tune with your birth chart, the moon cycles, how it all works, it's all very fascinating.
It is. And also just like feel free, like Elle was saying, going through and just making notes of like, okay, sun, 11th house, Taurus, like writing all those things down, but going through with your aspects on that lower little triangle of sun trine moon and moon trine Mercury, and going through and Googling and like starting to like research what all of those things mean. That's a really helpful way to start looking at your chart without judgment.
Yeah. And if you're not a good researcher and you're like, I want to be taught this, sign up with our different courses and different things, the memberships, because we can go in individually, and teach you how to read your chart, which might help you learn how to read others. Or if you just want to know more about yours, that's an opportunity for you to sign up for the memberships. And, we're happy to do that. That's something that we've agreed to do, Julie and I, to sit down and just like one-on-one, because one-on-one I had an astrologer when I was younger, and it really helped me.
Yeah.
find my
I
direction.
have one too.
I'm
Everyone
like,
should
it's
have
so
an
helpful.
astrologer.
Yes. Mine I have on speed dial. Shout out to Sean if he's listening.
Everyone's got an astrologer. Okay, what else do we got over here? I think those
So,
are the main ones.
yeah, I didn't want to go too much into all of it. I just wanted to give you the houses, the chart rulers, the degrees. Salem has things to say. She's got questions. But just kind of, where you are on this chart. You are in the center of it. You're the circle. That is you. That represents you. And when you were born, and how to tell, like, if it was day or night, and just kind of like giving everyone just a little bit of understanding of how it's read. Like, your moon is in this house with this chart ruler, and it's this degree, so that way everyone can like
It
start
looks
to
more
do.
intimidating than it is.
Yeah, the lines are just representing, because there's a lot of them. You've got a lot of aspects. You've got all the planets interacting with one another, so yeah, there's going to be a lot of lines. There's going to be good and bad in everybody. There's no one that's perfect. And this is an indication of that. This just shows you how to see where your imperfections are. And I mean, I just think it's a beautiful tool to use and understand. So we wanted to teach it.
When you were talking about us being the center of the circle, would it be important to look at those lines that are going straight through the middle, maybe first?
That are the squares.
Yeah.
There are significance of aspects, and we could totally teach that on another class, just because that's a whole nother bag in itself. But yes, there are aspects that are stronger than others. There are some that are going to affect you more sooner in life than later in life. That's kind of one of the things too, that's like when it's going to affect you, or it's just, yes, it does signify something, but that's going to be for an aspect topic that we're going to teach. So, but yeah, it's really cool to use your chart as a tool to understand yourself. If you are one of those people that are like, I don't know why I do this, or why I don't do that. Why do I procrastinate? Where are your
I need to look
placements?
at that one too.
Where is Libra in your chart? What is the chart ruler? Because even an empty house signifies something. You can have a house full of planets. That's huge. But also lacking planets in a house is like kind of a significant thing to look at too. So there's just so many different things to look at in a chart that hopefully we broke some down for you, and you at least know how to read it. And yeah, we'll just continue to teach until everybody's a professional astrologer.
Exactly. I mean, imagine if they taught this in schools, how much easier it would be to like understand yourself and be self-aware, or understand the person next to you. Like, oh, okay, their struggle in life is actually relationships, so let's not take it personally.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna. It gives you, when you know someone's birth chart, and I guess some people could look at this as manipulation, but it does give you an advantage to kind of like give understanding for that person. And so when you know like their struggles, you kind of have like empathy of like, okay, like they are not good at this, or they're struggling with that. So that's kind of an advantage you have. I know I use it with all my kids. They're all different, and it's so helpful. And I homeschool, so I teach them. Well, I will be homeschooling. I'm not currently homeschooling. I will be homeschooling. And so that's part of the, curriculum, is learning birth charts, pagans, traditional, different like healings of different properties of different plants. Like there's so many things that it's like you could really change,
Which is why we're making this school.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. I don't know if anyone has any questions. This would probably be the time. Otherwise, you can reach out to me, Elle, or Megan later if you don't have the opportunity to watch this live. And then after this, we'll be deep diving into each zodiac.
This is going to be fun.
I'm very excited.
It's going to be so fun.
Yeah, I've started the list already. And we've got some exciting things coming that we're not ready to announce yet, but some cool stuff. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
We got a question. What do you usually focus on when you start a chart reading? That's a good question.
I like to look at the sun, the moon, the houses that they're in, the aspects, and something that we didn't really talk about because I feel like it could go on forever are the transits, which are what are happening real time, like things that are, where the planets are and how they affect you based on where your planets are. So I like to look at those first, kind of gauge what kind of aspect I'm dealing with the sun and moon, and then just really all the planets, like the ascendant, the degrees. I just kind of go through the list of planets and I just watch their aspects and how they all intertwine. And that's where I start. Definitely start with the sun.
Yeah.
So, and the house that it's in, because when you have a sun, so like this one, for the sun to be in the 11th house, I would say this Taurus values friendship because the 11th house is friendship. And it's, they might even be like a very known activist, because friendship and like humanitarian work, those are things that the 11th house represents. Their sun is in that house. So it gives an indication that this person cares about the environment, cares about the earth. Also, the fact that they're a Taurus, I mean, Taurus is automatically connected to the earth because it's an earth sign. So I'd say there's a heavy possibility that this person is very earthy, appreciates the earth, humanitarian, loves friends, very grounded, stable. Finances are very important to them. And I can't see what degree it's in, and I can't make my thing bigger. But if it's a higher degree, then I'd say they're maybe more evolved. If it's lower on the degrees, then I'd say less evolved in working through that. Evolving.
I just realized this birth chart's for someone who was born today at 9 a.m. So cute.
Little baby. I mean, it's a good chart. They
It
definitely have a nice little Taurus stellium, probably very scheduled and very practical.
Very cute. Awesome.
So yeah.
Well, that's everything I have. Anything else?
Nope, that's all I got.
Anything, Megan? She's good. All right, well, let's close this out for now, and then we'll see everyone next Tuesday for breaking down the Aries.
If you're an Aries, you will want to stay tuned. We are going to give you all the good, the bad, the tea of Aries.
Let's see.
What body part you should really watch out for. I mean,
yes,
there's
this is the part I'm getting excited for.
Yes, that's going to be you. I'm like, you take over. You do all that.
All right, well, I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.